We're ready to get started. So we're going to give you 5 minutes to answer the first question, which is simply, why did you decide to run for office? And of course, you can also introduce yourself. All right.
So I'm Dorothy Gasque, and I'm also running for the 3rd Congressional District against Jamie Herrera Butler. I'm a 3rd-generation public servant. My family taught me 2 important things. One, that democracy requires participation, and that democracy must be defended. I joined the Army out of high school in order to defend democracy, but I was sent to war not in the defense of American democracy, but on behalf of the oil oligarchy. I deployed to Iraq as the only woman in an otherwise all-male combat unit. At the time, women weren't allowed to serve in combat roles, but I would find myself leading combat patrols, managing base security, and on the worst days, losing my brothers. I'm running because my son was an infant when we went to war in Afghanistan. He was 3 when I deployed to Iraq. He is now 17, and we have been at war for his entire life. Wars should not last generations. And it is the corrupting influence of money that leads us to this position. So that is my top priority, is to fight that, to pass the American Anti-Corruption Act so that we can stop fighting useless wars, so that we can fix our issues with the environment, so that we can have universal health care. Because all of these issues we face are stopped because the lobbyists have more power over our representatives than we do. I have pledged not to take any corporate interest money. That's not just corporate PAC money, but I'm not taking money from the executives who also push these decisions. Because it's easy to not take the corporate PAC money. It's a whole lot harder to say no to the executives. Now, I got my start with the Bernie Sanders campaign and built the political revolution in Clark County. And I'm just really happy to be here with you guys again for this second time. Now, since I was last here, we've been endorsed by brand new Congress and Justice Democrats. And we're building an awesome grassroots campaign. We are definitely a threat to the Democratic Party establishment. And we're just really doing the best that we can. And we have one of the best shots of beating Jamie Herrera Butler, not just because of the strong grassroots campaign that we're running, but because my background allows me to reach some of those swing voters in a way that the other candidates can't. So I'm Dorothy Gasque, and I hope that I can count on your support.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for putting this event together, and thank you to Susan, and thank you to Florence for organizing all of this. I know it's a huge effort. My name is David McDevitt. I'm running for United States Congress, and this is the second time I've run. The first time was in the 2015-2016 cycle. And my primary reason for running is that I want to help as many people as I possibly can. So I focus predominantly on issues that affect people's pocketbooks. The first issue that I talk about is health care for all, and I call it a health care security for all system, and it goes beyond what Medicare for all talks about. There are problems with the Medicare for all proposals that are in Congress today, and I think we need to go the next step, the next level, and we need to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to receive care without being put into a position of having to declare bankruptcy or being afraid of having a pile of bills arrive at their doorstep 2 or 3 months down the road after they've received care. And this should apply to children, it should apply to senior citizens, and everybody in between. I also talk about incomes, and I think incomes need improvement in a significant way. Now, as many of you probably know, the economy has not treated people that are low-wage workers or middle class very well over the last 35 to 40 years. The middle class has lost about 4 to 5%. Middle class has gained about 4 to 5%. The lower income workers have actually lost about 4 to 5% in terms of relative income. And at a time when costs are going up and rents are going up. It's creating a significant amount of pressure when it comes to food security and when it comes to housing security. So not only do we have the health security issue, we've got the housing and the food combining to that, and our homelessness is going up. So we've got to address this. We've got to address it in a pretty quick way. When it comes to our environment, we realize that our environment, we're having a climate change issue, and we need to deal with it in a hurry. Our Citizens Climate Lobby folks say that if we don't start taking significant and drastic action within the next 2 years, what we're going to see is catastrophic consequences by the time we get out into the 2100 century. So we've got to start taking action. That really means doing some innovative things like enhancing the amount of renewables that we're doing. California's done some interesting things requiring 100% of new homes being built to have solar panels on them, and that's just one of the possible ways that we can address the issue. But we've got to do more. We've got to get off of fossil fuel, and we've got to transition off of it a little bit faster than we might have done otherwise. When it comes to transportation initiatives, I think it's really critical, and it's maybe less so here in Thurston County, but it's still a problem, and that is that our roads and infrastructure is in disrepair. We have an opportunity to expand in terms of broadband and get more of the rural communities onto broadband internet, but we also need to take care of our roads. And within the context of the 3rd Congressional District, we really need to have a system, a framework to resolve the problems with Oregon. Oregon has a mind of its own, and they'd like to toll us to death, but we need to figure out a way to work with them, and that framework can resolve that problem. Then, and not lastly, let's talk about guns. My position on firearms is that we need to rapidly pursue a series of regulations to reduce the number of suicides and also to reduce the number of mass shootings. That's what the law says. It's what Justice Scalia and Antonin Scalia and Samuel Alito judged. We need reasonable regulations, and it's time. One of the possibilities is to ban assault weapons. I'm in favor of that, but there's also the notion of licensure and also the notion of having insurance to cover some of the unforeseen losses that can occur. My name is David McDevitt. You can check out my website at mcdevittforcongress.com. I've got some flyers over here and some bumper stickers if you'd like one, and I greatly appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Let me ask a question. Is there anyone in here that's not concerned about food, clothing, and shelter? Is there anyone in here that's not concerned about medical? Is there anyone in here not concerned about our environment, our air, the food we eat and its safety, the water we drink, and the plastic that most of it's in? Since we all agree on that, let me say thank you for being here. My name is Jennifer GiGi Ferguson, and I'm running for U.S. Senate because the same issues we fought in 1960, that my cousins went to jail for, that my grandmother fought in employment for, that I was sent into white schools versus them making education equal for all. We're now not just fighting these issues for Black and brown people. We're fighting these issues for everyone. For Black, brown, and poor white are at the bottom of the scale, And our young people, our children, our grandchildren, our millennials, what type of world are we creating for them? We fell asleep. I've been in the fight my entire life. I was born in Chicago in the projects with a midwife and my mother. I lost a baby brother at the age of 5. I lost my mother to cancer at 7.5, 6 months after she was diagnosed. My father had to adopt me because the programs that were put in place to help families divided families. In order for a woman to have assistance, the man could not be in the home. And people wonder why Black men are not in the homes. No one told them your dad was not allowed here. And when I say not allowed, it's because they did midnight raids where police and social workers came into the homes between midnight and 4 a.m. And if the father was there, the mother was kicked off of assistance. I am Park Creek Nation, but I cannot get on the registry because my great-great-grandfather chose to be in the military and deny his race, his nature, in order to support his family. He was light enough that he was able to be an officer because whites, Blacks, and Native Americans in the War of 1812 could not serve. I have been a servant leader my entire life, working in our communities. And I continue. And I am suited for the office I'm going after in making difficult decisions. As a marriage and family therapist, working with families involved with the state, and chemical dependency counselor, working with our youth, I have a very good idea of what's going on out there. I ask for your support. I'm Jennifer GiGi Ferguson, www.GiGi for Senate.us. And I'm also on Facebook, and I'm reachable, and I'm touchable. And the word politician means servant, and that's exactly what you'll get in me. Thank you.
Well, my name's Clint Tannehill. I'm also running for U.S. Senate. For me, the reason for running for office, it's the old sentiment that not enough good people run for office, or not enough good people are in politics. And I would tend to agree with that. Growing up through my life, it was always kind of a battle, us versus them, the citizens versus the politicians, or the politicians were always looking to get over on you. And that was always the battle that you see in the community in day-to-day life. But our government is supposed to be run by citizens, not career politicians. The incumbent's been in for rounding out 18 years. 18 years. That's a long time. 6 more, that'll be 24 years in the same office. I look at our society right now. We've got a gaping divide, a social divide going through society. I can see it in my day-to-day interactions. I have family and friends all over the state. I've lived in Washington the majority of my life and have lived all around the state. So I can see it when I talk to old friends, people I went to high school with, and the divide's just getting wider and wider. It's not something that happened overnight either. It didn't happen in the last presidential election cycle. It's something that's been festering for a long time, and now it's just really at the surface because it's getting worse. Now with Maria Cantwell, she's been in there 18 years. I'm not saying she's in there pushing the divide wider, but is she pulling it back together? That's my question. You're sitting there at a table and you see a glass about to spill over, and you can grab it, but you don't. Is it your fault it spilled over? I guess that's a personal thing. But right now, we do have this issue, and it's front and center. We can't go through 6 more years of not addressing this. It will be my goal to address this social divide. I've lived across the state. I have experience, and I understand people of all creeds. So I will look to bridge that social divide. Furthermore, I would look to address our gun control issue that we have. Right now, we don't have the ability to research thoroughly for gun control. Initially, we would come out with common sense gun reform, no fly, no buy, things that are bipartisan that we can push through quickly. Also, extensive mental health background checks so we understand who has weapons. And then at the same time, push to be able to do research on the situation as a mental health, or sorry, as a public health situation. So we have to do the research thoroughly so we understand the situation completely. And at that point, we can push new legislation and change the system. Right now, we're blocked, so we can't do research on it. And it makes it very difficult to push any type of legislation through and get bipartisan support when we don't have all the facts. We got to look at it like this. If it was up to me, we'd clear all the high capacity magazines and all the assault weapons off the streets. But from what we've seen, that won't happen overnight. And as much as Democrats want to see that happen, it's not going to be that easy. We have to get to a situation where we can do the research and we get our foot in the door, and then we can expand on that. Furthermore, money in politics, I think it's fairly bipartisan that everyone wants big money out of politics. The problem with that is that the Democrats, all of us, keep on voting in big money politicians. So we do it to ourselves. For that to change, we have to open up to our neighbors and be willing to talk politics and share information free of charge to politicians. It's going to be our only way to keep big money out of politics, and I would urge you guys to do that. The goal with our campaign is to share as much as possible on social media and expand over those networks. So if you guys get a chance, if you guys would look up our Facebook page, follow, and share if possible. So thank you guys for your time.
In the 3rd Congressional District, I think the 3 top issues are healthcare, incomes, and transportation. And the one that's going to be the easiest lift, the one that's going to be the easiest to address, is the transportation infrastructure issue. And when it comes to how, the first is to establish a framework for working with Oregon State. And it's a congressional act to legislate a joint powers authority between the state of Oregon and the state of Washington. So that's the first thing that I would do. That's something that's an easy lift, and it makes a lot of sense because southwestern Washington, especially Clark County, in combination with Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties, services as a metropolitan area as it is. Now, I think also we need to add in Cowlitz County, but that's because there's bridges. The reason we need a framework is because there are 17 bridges going across the state from Idaho border all the way out to Astoria. And we're going to have to resolve those issues eventually, but the I-5 bridge is number one. When it comes to healthcare, again, I think that seeking a healthcare security system for all, guaranteeing that everyone has the opportunity to receive care without fear of reprisal is the best way to approach it. It's a long shot, it's a heavy lift, but if we target the moon, we might get there. If we target, the corner down the street, that's all we're going to get. So I think we need to fight hard to get what's right for everyone, for all citizens. And then the incomes thing is a big deal too. We need to fight for a stronger minimum wage, and we need to fight for a enhanced Social Security so that everybody has the opportunity to have an income that they can live on. With that, I'll turn the mic over to the next candidate. Thanks.
All right, so we actually ask people every time we knock on the door what their number one issue is, and the one we hear the most in Clark County is affordable housing, and actually in Cowlitz and Clark County is affordable housing. And I mean, that really does come down to let's increase living wage and let's do more to help encourage multi-use buildings, especially taller buildings in the area. I mean, we have a lot of problems with our real estate developers building homes that start at $400,000. And nobody can afford those. And so we have homes sitting empty and people living on the streets. Healthcare is another one that comes up. And I fully support a Medicare for All program that eliminates copays, reduces our cost per capita by half, and includes dental and vision. So because there are a lot of things that people don't understand about, like our teeth, that can harm you, you know, and how can someone get by if they can't even see? And really, we should just fix our healthcare system to something that works. I mean, it's fiscally responsible and morally responsible. And I think the other issue that comes up all the time is money in politics. It's the one thing that we all share across the board. Doesn't matter whether you're Republican, Independent, Democrat, or third party. Everybody wants money out of politics because they know that that is what is corrupting our government. So I think that's about my time.
So for me, it's across the state. And I'm going to say number one appears to be healthcare for all, single payer. And when people say, but we can't do that, my husband is a Vietnam veteran, a son that served in Iraq, and a son that just came home this weekend from South Korea. We have very good health care in the Army. And they're taking care of our veterans, but it's going down. So we can have single payer health care for all, and it can be done. And the United States knows how to do it because we're currently doing it. Our environment, the water, the air, and what we eat. We have countries that will not accept our food because the food that we ingest, that our children ingest, is not safe for them to eat. If it's not safe for them, why is it that we're eating it? And the last one is income inequality. And whenever you have income inequality, which most people think is like 25,000 to 1,000, it's really like 849 to 1, which is where we are, which is why poverty is high, homelessness is high, and people are where they are, and people are so angry. And that is part of the reason number 45 got into office, because people want to be able to take care of their families. They want to feel safe, be safe, and have hope. And what am I going to do? Same thing I've been doing, fighting for it, except now I will be able to fight for it with legislation. And I know how they do laws, and I'm going to use it.
I would say our three major issues are going to be education, healthcare, and homelessness. But systemically, we're going to come back to education. Right now, K through 12 system. You finish the K through 12 system, it's going to get you a not very good job. You're going to have a base level job, something that's probably going to be lost to automation fairly rapidly within the next 5 years. So we need to rework the education system to meet the current economic demands of today. We're talking a public college system that will give everyone a 4-year degree, optional vocational programs as well. Right now we have unfulfilled jobs across the state because we do not have the skilled employment to take those jobs. You look at a company like Amazon shipping in thousands of people to fill positions that we don't have educated people here to fill those positions. So it's an American company growing, and that's great, right? But they're having to ship people in, and these are 80 to 150,000 a year jobs. That's great family wage jobs. If we can rework our education system to meet the current market demands, we can employ our own people. And that would be the one major one. The only thing we can really do for that, that's not just a Band-Aid or a surface level fix, is going to be back to education. Equity, we need to find people where they are and look to educate them from that point. The bar of entry to our education system, especially our higher education system, is very difficult for the majority of people to navigate through. So we need to open up the access to education and align our education with industry, and not the industry of today, but the industry of 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 6 years from now, depending on what type of education someone's looking to get into, and use that as our #1 tool to solve this problem.
Yes, the way to address income inequality is through education. And education has to start in the womb. When mothers are carrying their babies, begin to talk with their children, pre-K on up. We have to have equal education for all in every zip code, and not just for those who can afford to have it. Our children need to be able to critically think. The best way for the duopoly to keep us suppressed is to keep us uneducated, unable to critically think, and unable to unite as one. Their largest fears. So what do? They keep us divided by color, by socioeconomic means, by so many areas: education, the ability to critically think, and those are areas that also open the doors for education and open the doors for jobs. If people are not taught this, how are they expected to be able to move to a higher level of thinking and living? Thank you.
All right, I don't think we can solve income inequity in 2 minutes, so I'll do my best here. I think first and foremost, we need a living wage. We need our minimum wage to be a living wage tied to the cost of living, so that we're not fighting this over and over again. I mean, in Clark County, where I live, a living wage is $21.50. Median wage is like $13 an hour. So it's a huge disparity between what people make versus what it costs to live there. Then we can do a 21st century New Deal. Let's invest in infrastructure. Let's develop the technology for the future. Let's give people the skills they need to succeed. But to deal with the inequities, that's a whole lot more complicated. And that does come to, one, ensuring education is a lot more equitable, ensuring that we're investing in the communities that are the hardest hit, and ensuring that we're doing our best to make sure there are fair wages across the board, regardless of gender and ethnicity and race. And I mean, it's going to take a lot. We need an economy that is not just focused on the stock market, but actually focuses on our standard of living. We continue to hear over and over again, the economy's booming, everything's great. But the standard of living in the United States is declining, and it has been declining for 40 years. So when we talk about the economy, we need to talk about it from the perspective of the people, not from the perspective of the stock market.
It's important to take a historical look. You know, the starting of the income inequality started with Bill Clinton signing into law the limitation, or rather the lifting of the limitation to CEO compensation and the tax deductibility of that level of compensation. So the CEOs started making now millions and millions of dollars, while the low-wage workers continued to stay relatively stagnant. And we've seen that stagnancy for low-wage workers and the middle class going over the last 35 years. So I think one of the things to do is to raise the minimum wage and to raise the level of benefits for Social Security, but it's also to reinstitute some of the tax deductibility caps for CEO pay so that we can bring the compensation back and narrow the wide nature of that income disparity or that gap. Now that's only part of the problem, because one of the other things we've got to do is we've got to address the cost issue. Now, we were talking earlier, one of the folks mentioned housing insecurity and affordable housing. We in the state of Washington have a law that's on the books that prohibits rent control. Now, I'm not a strong advocate of having rent control, but that law makes our state a magnet for real estate investment companies to come in from out of state, like the one did recently from San Francisco, and buy a 270 unit complex for $166,000 per unit. You know damn well what they're going to do is they're going to go in, do a cheap paint job, throw some crummy carpet, and double the rent. So we've got to address not only the income side of it, but we've got to address the cost side too. The obvious answer is yes. There's an act of unfairness when it comes to superdelegates, and it gives the people that are designated as superdelegates an ability to pre-select who their candidate is, and without allowing the general public to have their say when it comes to the general public's vote. So I would be voting in any bill that would try to undermine that in such a way that we would restore democracy to the people, for the people, and by the people.
Yes, I support the elimination of superdelegates. I've already pledged that if I were to become a superdelegate, my vote will go to the winner of my district. And the easiest way that we have to do this is what we have been doing, which is building up progressives in the party so that we have people in place to vote in DNC members that will vote to eliminate superdelegates. And that's what I will continue doing, what I've always been doing, and encouraging people. It is time right now to file to be a PCO. This week. Doesn't cost anything. And that gives you the deciding power of who your leadership will be in the state party. And these people will be voting on DNC members in the future. And this is one of the most important cycles, because this is the cycle in which we will determine the leadership in this state for the 2020 presidential election. So I will encourage everyone to file by Friday to be a PCO. And then show up in December for our reorganization meetings and support people who will make the party more inclusive.
We have to understand why they have superdelegates. If we start with why they have superdelegates, it makes it much easier to see how we can destroy them. We have superdelegates because the Democrats did not get the people they wanted to be president twice. So they found a way to put into, I believe, law to allow them to have superdelegates to overwrite the people's vote. Whenever we have a corporation that we continue to vote for over and over that decides they want to overwrite the people's vote, one person, then we have to do what we can to bring either that party down or that party under subjection to the people, by the people, and for the people. They are not a party for the people. That is why I'm running as an independent.
I also think we need to rework the delegate system. It's outdated. And with the distribution of people over our country, I think finding ourselves in a truer democracy system, one person, one vote, would work much better. The road to get there, though, is going to be the challenge, because a lot of times the people at the top are the people with the power, the delegates, or the person that the delegates have put in place to lead. So it's going to take we as Democrats to vote in people that we know will disrupt the system and rework the power structure to work in favor of the people. Single biggest failure. Oh man. I guess the first one that comes to mind is, well, talk about big money in politics. It's a case study for that right there. We don't notice it that much when we agree with the big money ideology. So we never notice them voting against what we believe in until it comes up, as we saw with the bill that Bernie Sanders and another Democrat looked to push through Congress for the importation of drugs from Canada, prescription drugs. And Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell both voted against it, and this is a bill that's actually getting bipartisan support. And then they come out with canned answers that are very similar to the answers that we see from Big Pharma. Now, did the contributions to their campaigns from Big Pharma sway their decision? I can't say for 100% sure that they did, but I can look at their answers and I can look at Big Pharma's answers and I can put two and two together. And then if you look at the 100 senators and you look at the top 3 recipients of money, Patty Murray's number 3. She's standing on the podium. So, sorry.
For me, I agree. What stands in my mind the most is Maria Cantwell and Patty Murray and Cory Booker voting against negotiating lower prices for pharmaceuticals. Why? Because I also do food banks. And when our church started doing a food bank and people told us we were angels because they were having to eat cat food and dog food in order to pay for their medication, I was outraged. I looked through the bill. 3 of us stayed up all night looking through that bill to see maybe something was thrown in that bill that would make them not want to vote for it. Nothing was in that bill. So the only thing that we could find was the money that they were getting from Big Pharma. That right now is the single one issue that causes the most bankruptcies in the United States. That's huge.
How about grassroots activists?
I agree. The most powerful tool are the people and grassroots activism. That's what we have in the state and across the nation.
I would say most powerful tool is definitely the will of the people. I will champion the will of the people at all times.
Well, let's give our candidates a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
And I will direct them to